Always, this is Dave. If you're interested in learning Latin or ancient Greek, please see my information in the description, something I love to help students with in my evenings and weekends. And we are continuing with the Homeric hymn to Hermes. The last time we saw that the Kudimos Hermes, the fame-bringing Hermes, was leading the 50 cattle he had stolen through all kinds of different geographic features, including mountains and auronas, hollows, and pedia, plains, okay, in an effort to get as far away from the scene of the crime as possible. And then we get the following lines: Orphnai e depikuros epaueto daimonie nux he pleon tachadorthros egigneto demio ergos. So Orphainie and daimonie both modify nux here, and this means that the dark or murky, and daimonie is like divine, doesn't have that negative connotation that we have in English with words related to this, like demon, right? So the dark and divine night, Epikuros, the helper or ally of Hermes, okay, epaueto was ending. It was coming to an end, right? It was finishing. It was stopping. He pleon. Okay, so then we get this qualifier that for the most part, okay, meaning that the night was mostly over, okay. And tacha dorthrus egigneto demio ergos, that orthros demio ergos, that the craftsman dawn, right? That's what demio ergo, demiurge, really means, right? When we compare that to God, it's just because we're comparing God to a craftsman. This word would have been understood as a craftsman in the archaic period. So tacha, quickly, so craftsman dawn quickly was coming into being, or was being born. So in other words, dawn is about to break, right? He deneon scopien prosebesato dia selene palantos dugater megame dia dao en anactos. All right, so this dia here, he dia selene, this is not the dia meaning through, rather the one here with this circumflex accent over the iota. This is referring to the divine Selene, the moon goddess. So basically this sentence is going to describe what the moon is doing, that the divine Selene was approaching her scopia, right, her vantage point, right, her height in the sky, her zenith, you could say, neon, anew. So the divine Selene was approaching her height in the sky, okay, was the divine Selene, the Thugater, the daughter of Pallas. Okay, Thugater, we actually get our word daughter from this word in English, believe it or not, or at least they're related somehow, I'm pretty sure. Palantos of Pallas, who in turn Pallas, the son of Megamedes, the Lord Megamedes, Megamed deodao anaktos. Okay. Te mosep alphe on potamon dios alkimos huios, voi buapolonos bus elasen eurumetopus. All right, so, and this means that then, temos, then over here our subject is Dios alkimos huios, the brave son of Zeus, okay, elasen, this is from elauno in our vocabulary stack, and it means that he drove, okay, he drove what? The bus eurumetopus, okay, the broad-faced cattle. That's, I guess, how archaic Greeks thought about cows, was that they had wide faces or something like that. And okay, so then the brave son of Zeus drove the broad-faced cattle of Phoebus Apollo, okay, Phoibu Apollonos. So what does that mean, Phoibos? Like it, you see translations offered like bright, but this epithet is so common for Apollo that in fact I think there are actual English translations of epic poems that actually just transliterate it, Phoebus Apollo, the whole way through. So we'll just say that. We'll say that then the brave son of Zeus uh, drove the broad-faced cattle of Phoebus Apollo ep altheon potamon to the river Alpheus. Acme tes dikanon dep aulion hupsimelatron kai lenus proparoiten ariprepeos lemonos. All right, so what does this mean? That akmetes, which is to say tireless, hikanon, they were arriving ep aulion hupsimelatron to the high vaulted, meaning high ceilinged shelter, right? Kai lenus and the troughs, okay? Proparoiten in front of, and then ari prepes means glorious, right? In front of the glorious lemonos meadow. So that okay, that gets us to line 104. Ent epe eu botanes epe forbe bus erimucus kai tas men sunelas senesaulion atroas usas lo tone ereptomenas ed se entacuperon. Okay. So what's going on here? So enta, okay, which means there, okay, epe eubotanes epe forbe bus erimucus, when he had fed the bus erimucus, the loud bellowing cows, another great epithet for the cows that fits the meter really nicely, right? Bus erimucus. So there, when he, like I said, when he had eforbe, like when he had grazed them, when he had fed the loud bellowing cows botanes with grass, okay, kai tasmen sunelasenes aulion atroas usas, and sunelasen, again, this is from Elauno, but it's soon Elauno. So when he drove them together, okay, into the Aulion Atroas. When he drove them, Atroas is like packed in together, okay, into the Aulion, into the shelter. Them being packed in together, right? That's what the usas is. Lo tonerep tomenas ede. So lo ton erep tomenos, and I think this is ede, which is just and. So munching on or grazing on loton. This is actually the same word as the lotus eaters, but here it's just better usually translated as clover. So munching on clover, and herse enta cuperon. Herse enta means like fresh or dewy, and cuperon means shoot. This is it's a specific kind of plant. I wrote it down, but then I forgot it. Hang on. It's the gallingale or something like that, right? Gallingale? Yeah, here it is. Gallingale, which I don't know exactly what kind of plant that is, but that's the translation you'll get if you look it up in your Great Scott. You'll see there. that the couperon is the gallingale. And then finally, sun dephorek sulla pola puros depemaieto technein, that but sun ephore, so he gathered together, or he brought together, or he was bringing together, I guess is more precise, okay? Xula pola, many logs, puros depemaieto technein. The epimaiato means he was seeking after the technein, the skill, puros, of fire. So not only, one day, first he invents the lyre and plays it, then he steals the cows from Apollo, and now he is trying to learn how to light a fire. And he's 1 day old at this point, Hermes. This is the hymn to Hermes, and kind of a neat little story. So we're about, we're over 1/6 of the way through this poem at this point. I'm sure that we could probably power through to the end. Maybe we will actually, or eventually we will. We'll have a full list of this because it's just such a fun little poem. But anyway, that's more about Hermes. And again, if you're interested in learning more about ancient Greek poetry and ancient Greek and Latin, you can send me a message. And until next time, voile.